Welcome to the show today. I have an interesting man to introduce you to in a second. We just had a short chat before we went live. He's got an unusual way about him. He doesn't eat sugar, but that isn't what we're talking about as a sweet conversation today, as we segue into his unique background of healthcare costs for people at 50%. That's what caught my attention, because healthcare costs in the US are out of control. I know that just for myself, insurance is over $1,000 a month for me to be insured. Just for me, a man at 61 years old. And I'm going to be eagerly listening and understanding a little bit about that with our featured guest today, Mr. Shelley Saxena. So Shelley, welcome to the show, and I'm excited to learn about this. And how do people save 50% on their healthcare costs with you?
Mitch, thanks for having me on the show. So our complete tagline is artificial intelligence enabled primary healthcare at up to 50% lower cost.
That's
so
amazing.
The way we achieve those cost savings is by having a dramatically different delivery model for primary healthcare. So first of all, we use technology in that delivery model. We use a lot of AI-based diagnostics and AI-based consultations, which reduce the cost of care. So for example, in our model, a nurse with our AI can predict your multivitamin and mineral deficiencies and recommend a complete diet, exercise, and stress reduction plan. So by replacing a dietitian with a nurse and our diet AI, we reduce the cost by up to 67%, just on that alone, for a nutrition intervention. Then we have a lot of point of care diagnostics using our AI. So for example, we can count your red blood cells and white blood cells, screen for conditions like anemia, screen for diabetic retinopathy and cataract, screen for, let's say, tuberculosis, screen for different things in urine, all by using our AI and enabling a nurse to do all this. Now, typically, a pathologist or a ophthalmologist would do all of this analysis, right? And so you have to transport the samples. You have to then use a specialist. The cost of the specialist is more than that of a nurse. The cost of transportation of the samples is like much more than doing the analysis right then and there. So that's how we achieve the savings by using technology. The second thing which we did is completely revamp the health outcome delivery model. So first of all, we serve patients only in groups. What that means is our patients are employees, they are schools students, they are, let's say, communities in rural, they are, let's say, microfinance beneficiaries, they are health insurance companies, subscribers, and so on. So we have a captive audience wherever we provide our care. So on a given day, let's say in India, we serve around 75 patients per day, per medical team. In the US market, that number is around 30 patients per medical team per day. So the capacity utilization is much more, and because of which we are able to spread out our fixed costs over a much larger patient base, right? And so that reduces the cost per patient. Yes. The second thing is we do a lot of stuff right then and there. So a lot of our point of care diagnostics, along with our AI, we have third-party off-the-shelf equipment for HIV, syphilis, hepatitis C, malaria, dengue, typhoid, cholesterol, urine, sugar, hemoglobin, and so on and so forth, right? So all of these tests happen right then and there. So no patient transportation, no sample collection, everything done right then and there, right? So that's the second way in that delivery model that we reduce the cost of the care.
And it's also faster.
Yeah.
Let me jump in.
It's faster, yeah.
Yeah. So you speak very fast. That's great. We got to let people catch up. So you get things done very quickly, and you group the costs together. That's where the savings come from.
Absolutely, Mitch. And then the final piece in that is that we do not have any large fixed capex, right? So typically, if say you're working out of a fixed clinic, then you typically serve patients from a couple of miles from that fixed clinic, right? Within that radius, right? In our case, we have mobile units. Those units can rent from vehicles from Uber or Ola or whatever taxi operator is available. And then they go from site to site. So let's say site number 1, we are there every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Site number 2, We are there every Tuesday, Saturday, or so on, right? So this way, that unit can serve a much larger patient base, typically 2 to 3 hours radius from the base, right? And so again, the cost is spread over a much larger patient base versus just serving patients in a 2 to 3 mile radius from the base, right? So that's the other key piece. It's mostly an OPEX model. It's not a large CAPEX model.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that again. It's a what model and a model what?
It's mostly an operating expense model rather than a capital expense model, right? If you have a fixed infrastructure, so let's say you have a fixed clinic or a fixed hospital, then the cost of deploying that is much more, right? The upfront cost of deploying that. And the second thing is, let's say you have a clinic like here. Now, within a 2 to 3 miles radius from that clinic is the patient footfall that you're going to get, right? So what that means is, first, you have to invest a lot upfront in that model, a fixed CAPEX model. And the second thing is you can only serve a fixed patient base in that model. In our model, we rent from vehicles from whichever taxi operator is available. And then we serve multiple sites from the base, right? So those sites can be within 2 to 3 hours radius from the base. And those sites again serve patients in groups. So we can serve a much larger patient base rather than having a fixed clinic. Does that make more sense?
Now I get it. Yeah, but when you use acronyms, you lose people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah. All right. So your market is you can save companies money on their healthcare costs by doing this. Totally get this, because I remember when I had my ad agency, I had a huge line item every month for healthcare because I covered 100% medical. Was one of the ways I retained employees. But now I can retain them well, give them faster service with, or anybody in your market there in Atlanta. Are you strictly in the Atlanta market, or where do you fit?
We currently serve 15 plus states of India and 1 state of the US. We serve the greater Atlanta area in the US. Then we have also done pilots in Southern Africa. So South Africa, Botswana, Lesotho, and so on. We are a US-based company. We are Delaware C Corporation, and then we have a subsidiary in India. It was just easier to experiment and innovate in a developing country market where the regulations were less than in the US market, right? But then we did reverse innovation where we brought back the model which we had developed overseas back into the US market in an Atlanta pilot.
That's amazing. I love the model. Gosh, I wish I would have known you when I sold the agency some years ago, but that would have saved me a lot of money every month and provided a better quality product or service for the employees. The best of luck with you with that. But let's jump in. I want to know a little bit about you, the man, Shelley. So how would your friends describe you?
So first of all, let me give you my own background, how I came to the US. So I was born in India in a place called Lucknow, which is a tier 2 town, one of the poorest states in the country. And I did my bachelor's in engineering from Indian Institute of Technology. And then I did my MBA at Cornell. Prior to MBA, I did product development at IBM's Research Triangle Park in North Carolina. And after MBA, I did product management, channels, and go-to-market work again at IBM. They were sponsoring my green card at that time, and so I had to do my time there. So after 2010, I co-founded my first company, which was a cloud-based mobile technology company. And then around 5 years ago, I founded Sevamob, which is the healthcare company. And the immediate impetus for getting into healthcare was an episode with my mom. She was incorrectly diagnosed and almost lost her life because of hepatitis C. And so I thought, if this could happen in a tier 2 town with very good physician coverage and so on, what about areas in tier 3 and rural where such labs or such physicians did not exist, right? So that was the initial impetus for launching a technology-enabled services business in tier 3 and rural in India, right? And we got the funding for that from US-based impact investors. And then we made multiple changes to our model over time. And the changes were because we realized initially it was a B2C or business to consumer model. We realized it would take much more capital. It would take much more time to achieve sustainability on that business to consumer model. So then we switched to a business to business model, and that is what scaled from us for us. So in just 5 years, we scaled from 2 towns in Uttar Pradesh in India to 15 plus states of India, 1 state of the US, and then multiple countries in sub-Saharan Africa, right? With very little capital investment from other.
Okay, so I want to circle back to the question I asked. How would your friends describe you?
So my friends would describe me as an entrepreneur and a risk taker. I have a lot of hobbies which also add to that profile. I do a lot of trekking and hiking and so on, which add to that profile. I'm a little bit different from your typical entrepreneur in the sense that first of all, I'm very focused on social impact and social values, right? So that's how I have made my business. So the focus is more on the social impact than the economic side of things, personal wealth and so on. So that's how my friends would describe me. A guy focused on social impact and on actually delivering impact in the last mile.
Okay. And what is your greatest accomplishment?
So I would say just being able to, single greatest accomplishment would be to come up with a primary healthcare delivery model for the last mile in underserved areas, which there have not been many successful models to do that and to do that sustainably. So I would say that would be one of the single biggest accomplishments.
Great. And we all learn this through experience. And I know that you can look back a little bit. What do you wish you had known when you started out that you know today as a mature business person?
So I spent in my first company, which was a technology company, I spent a lot of time not realizing the value of relationships, the value of partnerships, the value of accelerators, the value of incubators. And so I lost a lot of time in that first company in order to gain traction, right? But having learned all those lessons, the second company was much easier. So I knew early on that to get access to capital, especially because I myself come from a very humble background, the value of being in an accelerator or incubator, right? So that helped us get money very early on and then do subsequent rounds. So I would say that was one of the big learnings, that be a part of an accelerator to raise funds. Then the second learning was you cannot do everything yourself. You have to have good partners, right? So we have multiple partners today of different types, resellers, licensees, franchisees across different geographies. So those partners help us grow faster and replicate the model faster. And then the third is the value of the team. So early on in my first company, I had to put together the team, bring together all different people. The second company, it was just easier to leverage many of those relationships and build the team much faster, and then make sure that that team was able to execute on the plan that we came up with.
You know what? It's interesting you bring that up. Your third component, the value of the team, seems to be the common denominator of the successful people that I speak to, that I interview. It seems the power of leverage is what you're really talking about, leveraging the right people to assist and join you in your mission, because you can't do it alone. And when you realize that and separate the ego is not your amigo, and realize that you need together each achieves more, because that's the value of team. And that's what the acronym comes in. So that's great. So I can understand why you're successful, because you have realized at a core level that the team is there. And what are you curious about right now? And answer that any way you like.
So when you say curious about, does that mean politically? Does that mean scientifically? Does that mean business-wise? What exactly, is the question about?
There is no exactly. I'm allowing it to be open-ended.
Okay, so there are a number of things I'm curious about. One, politically, where is US going to be in next 10 years, and where is the world going to be in the next 10 years? Because a lot of changes are happening worldwide, right? So the political models are changing as we speak. They've changed in the last 2 weeks. They've changed the last 4 years and so on, right? So the second thing is scientifically, a lot of medicine is now going to be personalized medicine, right? and the power of genomics, and how at the individual DNA level or gene level, a lot of diseases can be treated, right? Or the diseases can be diagnosed, right? And a lot of things which could earlier were a one-size-fit-all solutions. For example, for things like cancer, right? It was earlier a one-size-fit-all treatment for cancer, but now that treatment is getting much more personalized, and that's just one example of the type of diseases, right? So, for example, in the next 5 to 10 years, what is the value which personalized medicine can deliver? How I would say, how near term is that value going to be? For example, is that out 20 years, or can that be delivered in the next 5 to 10 years, right? And how dramatic and a change that's going to be in the medical industry. So I would say I'm curious about that. And I would say business-wise, I'm curious about how far I can take our model with the help of partners, with the help of investors, with the help of team members and so on. So that's the third piece of it.
Okay. And I already know that you've got the successful components. I mean, you're clearly a success in business and you're focused. But tell us, because every entrepreneur I've ever interviewed, there isn't one that has struck gold every single time. So tell us where you failed and what you learned from it.
So I would say our failure was in the first company. We were not able to grow it fast enough. And so that was a big failure for us. It took us a while to get the initial set of customers. It took us a while to do product development and so on. And the reason for that failure was I myself had a technology background, right? And the background from IBM. So what I did not realize is, as a startup, it's not enough to just build the product in one shot and then go and find the customers. And what is important is to build the initial proof of concept, find the anchor tenants who are going to be part of your vision, sell that vision to them, develop the product with them, and that way you have people who are going to vouch for your product, and that way you can get more people and buying your product. So that was a lesson which I learned in the first company, which I was easily able to deploy in the second company.
Okay, fantastic. This is my favorite question I'm leading into right now, just to let you know, because I find I'm a big history buff. So you'll understand this. I love to study history and man and why we do what we do. A lot of it is dictated based on the past. Why we pay attention to ancient texts, which make no sense to me because they don't apply to today. But here's something that I find interesting, and this tells me a lot about a person. If you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would you choose and why?
So
they have to be dead. They have to be dead.
That's a tough one. So I would say I am an avid practitioner of yoga and spirituality. And so some of the people I would name here, or one of the people I would name here, probably would not make sense to most of your audience. But say one of the Indian yoga gurus is the name which I would take there for that reason.
Okay, right? So one of the Indian gurus.
Yes, the yoga gurus. Yes.
Okay, and does he or she have a name?
Yes. So the person is Yogananda, and then his disciple Larry Mashai. So those are the people that I would love to have a coffee with, and then learn more and see how I can improve myself.
Okay, fantastic. So that shows that, yeah, you're really from India. Who's been your most important professional mentor?
I would say that my professional mentor is a person called Dr. Neeti Pal. She is out of UK. She runs her chain of primary care clinics there, and she has been very successful in growing that business there. And then also she serves on the board of several companies, and she is part of our board of advisors, and she has personally helped me grow in my business, and also helped us with several strategic connections. So I would say she definitely is one of my top mentors.
That's fantastic. All right, and a little bit of a flashback. 2020 hindsight is always great. If you could give the 18-year-old Shelley, one piece of advice, what would it be?
One piece of advice
at that age. So what would you tell this young man?
One piece of advice would be that technology is not everything. Technology has to come with the right business acumen in order to solve some real problems in the world. The 18-year-old Shelley thought technical savvy is all it takes. And the 47-year-old Shelley thinks that that needs to be paired with appropriate street smart and street skills in order to be successful.
And a little bit of marketing of those
ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. And today, because you're a man who is on a mission, I can just tell that by your energy. I mean, you don't need coffee, sir. Okay. What is your plan to achieve your goals that you have set out in front of you? Because I would imagine you have personal goals and or business goals.
Sure. So the business goals are in the next 5 years to replicate the model in South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa, and Central and Latin America, with the help of partners who can be franchisees, resellers, licensees, and so on, and investors. That's the business goal. And be known in the world as a person who has fundamentally transformed the delivery of primary care in the world, especially in the underserved settings, right? So that's the professional goal. The personal goal is to grow personally as a person, spiritually, because that is a very important component to me. It's tough to get into different levels of spirituality on this podcast, but there are different levels of spirituality. So grow personally as a person, achieve different levels, achieve different insights about our mission, why we are here in general.
Okay. And how would you feel in case you don't achieve your goal?
Well, I mean, it would not be a life well lived if the goals are not achieved, either professional or spiritual. Both of those have to happen. But life is what you make out of it. So I'm sure something else would come up.
Okay. So interesting. Different people answer that in a different way. And some say, I don't even accept failure, so I will achieve my goals. Yeah, you just said you answered that in a way that was a spiritual answer. It's like, well, I'll just move in another direction. The water will flow elsewhere if I hit a wall. And that's great.
Absolutely. And the reason for that is that one thing which I learned is that everything in your life is not in your control, right? So if you say, I will not accept failure, it means that you think that everything is in your control. And that is not really true.
Very, very good point. How do you overcome a challenge that life throws at you?
First of all, you have to look at how other people have successfully handled that challenge, right? So read books, look at memoirs, look at other case studies of how that challenge has been handled, right, in the past, and see if you can handle the challenge similarly. Then don't just give up if the first attempt does not work, if the second attempt does not work, if the third attempt does not work. Give yourself a window and keep trying, keep going at that challenge in that window until you're absolutely sure that you cannot solve that challenge, right? So those are the two things.
Okay. Have you written a book?
I have not written a book, but I have published papers with others, papers in journals.
Okay.
I am in the process of writing a book on AI, which will be published in the next 6 months. But no, the book is not out yet.
Okay, so if you had to write a book tomorrow, it would be about medical care AI.
Yes, technology in medical field. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. And what's one question you wish I'd asked you so you can communicate to the market? You can invent your own question and answer it. This is your opportunity, your latitude, sir, to just communicate what you want.
One question would be, so technology is always disruptive, and especially in, I would say, highly regulated and entrenched industries with entrenched players like healthcare, right? Healthcare has these behemoths, both from payer as well as provider perspective. So when technology is brought to those markets, there's always fear that this technology, what is this going to do? Is this going to really destroy the industry? What's going to happen? For example, a lot of physicians are afraid of artificial intelligence, right? So the question would be, technology like AI in healthcare, is that going to destroy the industry? Is that going to destroy the relationships, existing relationships? Is that going to destroy the value of physicians? Or is that going to add to the industry, add value to the industry? And my answer to that would be, the technology like AI in the healthcare industry is going to, first of all, enable physicians to do more, especially in those underserved settings, more than they can do today, right? And then it will free up their time to actually spend more time with the patients, than just have to spend more of their time in bureaucracy and other chores and so on. So technology would help them spend more time with the patients and deliver more value to the patients, especially in underserved areas. So they don't have to be afraid of it.
Okay, great. Great. And how can we support you and your mission?
So you can help us by spreading our gospel to other people, and that there is a way to provide primary care in underserved areas. It is sustainable. It can deliver substantial health outcomes, much better at better, cheaper, faster than any other model like today. So if you can just help us spread the gospel, that would be very helpful.
Now, let me ask this. So this is where they can get in touch with you. Is your URL or your website is right here on screen.
Yeah.
And so you can all see that. And then for the people who are audio only, sevamob.com, sevamob.com. This is where you can learn more about this. I'm particularly interested. My business, when I had physical, I mean, now I do everything online, and I have teams in various countries to handle certain tasks. When I had my physical location, I had a building with lots of employees and supplied this healthcare. I love your model, and I think the market that can be served is way beyond the let's say the disadvantaged. I think there are for-profit companies that would love the idea of slashing their healthcare costs by 50%.
And Mitch, I would like to clarify there. We are a for-profit social enterprise, right? What I mean is underserved. Underserved does not mean disadvantaged. Underserved means an area where there's currently not enough healthcare coverage, right? So, for example, Atlanta, for example, has one of the highest physician densities, right? But 1 hour outside Atlanta is an underserved area where pretty much there is no primary care clinic, right? There is no diagnostics lab. You have to bring the samples from there to Atlanta for processing, right?
Okay, you could do it all right there.
Exactly.
All right. So, okay, I misquoted. Thank you for that correction, because I do believe I can refer you. And this is where it's interesting. So you're right now in Atlanta, that's your primary market in the US, but you've done this in India, I would imagine, where healthcare wasn't provided. And obviously the cost structure is quite different there. I'm sure physicians work at 1/10 the price of what you would have to charge here, or nurse practitioners, and using a lot of nurse practitioners, I would imagine, in the model.
Yes.
Okay, or physician's assistants, I guess they're pretty much the same, aren't they?
Roughly, yes.
Yeah, roughly. Okay, just for purposes of the show, for people to understand. But I think you've got a great model. I love it. I wish I'd known you before I sold I think I would have slashed my monthly costs by, I don't even know, hazard the number. I think it would have been $30,000 a month I would have saved. Yeah, just the amount of employees I had with healthcare. And how would you rate your experience on the show today?
Mitch, the questions you have asked have been very insightful and a little bit different from other similar podcasts I've been on, which is what I liked about it, right? That your questions just went a little bit off the beaten track. And so it was pretty good experience from that perspective.
Great. Thank you. And what's your final word?
My final word would be, Mitch, thanks for having me on the show. Please keep doing the good work. And the more people whose messages you can spread, the better it is for people like me. So please keep doing your work. Thank you.
Great. And you've been very insightful. And like I said, I wish, because I am a for-profit business also, when I had my ad agency, I wish I'd known you 20 years ago. I could have, I think I could have bought another yacht, but I don't have a yacht, but it would have been a yacht purchase. So that's great. Ladies and gentlemen, this was a great interview today with Shelley Saxena, who gave us great information and can save money. For profit. You're also helping people get their healthcare faster. That's what I've taken away. It's a healthcare model that gets people served faster. And oftentimes that can be the difference between life and death. So this is no joke. Very serious, great offer. You saw a hole in the market, filled it, and I wish you the best of luck, Shelley, and to be able to help more people, because healthcare, this isn't about selling insurance. The speed doesn't matter. You're helping people faster, and that is a commendable business model. And thank you for your time and insight and intelligence today.
Thanks, Mitch. Thanks for having me on the show. Thank you.